Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features part 2 of my review and commentary on Heroes for Hope starring the X-Men. This is the back cover by Jim Starlin. Jim Starlin was one of the originators of this particular project. A jam issue of all-star creators, 48 pages of story and art concerning the X-Men, battling this antagonist who doesn't have a name in the series, but who represents fear, despair, and ultimately self-defeat of the human race, and thrives and flourishes on that. So the comic itself was created with a view to all profits being donated to charity for famine relief in Africa in 1985, and the famine in question at the time was in Ethiopia. So as I said, this back cover by Jim Starlin, pencils, inks by him, and representing all the X-Men of this particular era up against this entity. So let's get back into the story. My last video, I was halfway through the story, and at the halfway point, Wolverine alone had faced his inner fears and defeated the entity, and there he is standing tall. All the other X-Men have succumbed to the entity's fear and despair. Next up for testing is Storm, who in this particular era was leader of the X-Men, of course. And so the entity moves on to Storm. Now, this particular section, these couple of pages here, were scripted by Claremont. The story is by Claremont and Nocenti and others, but these particular couple of pages are scripted by Claremont, the regular writer of Uncanny X-Men and other X comics in this era. The pencils are by Brian Bolland, and the inks are by P. Craig Russell. So Storm there realizes her turn has come to face the psychic assault of the entity, and she thinks to herself, is this our foe? Who are you? Why are you attacking us? She asks aloud, what do you want? So the guy is represented, or the entity rather, represents himself in Storm's psyche as some kind of carnival, compere, and he invites her to follow him down his hall of mirrors if she dares, and then throws a pie in her face. So there he is dancing down through the hallway of mirrors. No offense, no harm done, all in fun. You're a good sport, hey? He asks her. You're the strong one, the mature one, the adult. You'll put up with anything? Oh, so come one, come all. See every aurora that's ever been, and the storms still to be. The what ifs, dreams and nightmares, the long sought, never found, heart's desire. So this is interesting because this reveals that Storm's greatest inner fear is the realization of her heart's desire. But what are the various possibilities? What are the desires that are deep down within herself? So one of them that the entity mocks her with is that of being the Earth Mother there, or the All-American girl there. Come on, you lost your powers, he says. You're not a mutant anymore. You've no real right to lead the X-Men. Sweetheart, it's got to be something. So great art on this page by Brian Bolland, and the next one similarly. So other options for Storm and her heart's desire in terms of alternative lives from leading the X-Men are the happy homemaker, which she rejects. The free spirit, she rejects it. The wanton, she rejects that. And then here she is in this kind of S&M bondage gear. Stop it, she exclaims. You have no right. These are lies. Your lips say no, 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 says the entity, but your heart, your soul, your outfit, they know the truth. Another pie heading straight for her face. Pieces of myself, she says. These may well be, but not the whole. I'm not a toy prancing and dancing for your amusement. Want to bet? Asks the entity as he throws that pie right in her face. And then we're on to a new creative team for the next couple of pages, namely Joe Duffy scripting the pages, John Bolton on art, and John Bolton inking his own pencils here. So she runs after the entity, but the shoes, these high heels that she's wearing, are awkward to run in. And then she sees herself in an arena of some sort. And those look like stacks and stacks of pies again. Another custard pie in the face. And now the entity has taken on the form of a clown. Oh, they are, dearie, they are. Wasn't that delicious? Here, have another. Have a lot. So let's continue. The story's getting pacey at this point. He blows her a mocking kiss. What's the matter, sweetie? Not having fun? See, I feel just terrible about that. I love you. Tell you what, Stormy, don't get mad, get even. Come on, plenty there for both of us. You don't. Why don't you throw? Witch goddess. Not much good for anything, are you? What's the matter? Don't think you can hit me? So she's goaded into saying, yes, I can, I'll show you who. But then she pauses. And in the background there, obviously Bolton using photographs for the representation of these starving people from the famine. And she's thinking to herself, Goddess, forgive me. So much want, so many in need, and all I was thinking of was weapons. So the entity's not pleased. Come on, throw it, ignore them, think of yourself, think of me, this is war. And she turns away from him. I'm more interested in peace. Here, my friends, there is enough for everyone. So Storm, too, like Wolverine, faces her deepest, darkest fears and desires and beats the entity and turns and shares those custard pies meant for payback with the starving people that she sees in the arena filled. The arena is filled full of them. Now, this is the appropriate point to return to something I said in part 1 of my review of this particular Jam comic, which was that it is a comic, the proceeds of which are to go to charity, specifically famine relief in Africa. And the mooted beneficiary charity was supposed to have been Oxfam. And what happened was that Oxfam, a representative of Oxfam, was shown mock-ups of the issue before it went to print, read through it, and evaluated the 48 pages of story and art as being, and I quote, racist, sexist, and reprehensible. In addition, the representative of Oxfam, I've tried to find out the name of the person, and that is not publicly available information. Jim Shooter has written about this on his blog, so that information, if you want to search for that yourself, you can. But the representative also was of the belief that the cover logo, this one here, which is credited to one Janet Jackson, the representative got it into their head that the Janet Jackson in question was Michael Jackson's sister, the singer, and that the logo had been stolen from her and used without permission, which is absolutely bananas. So in terms of the accusation of racism, the thinking is that it primarily has to do with the representation of Storm in this issue, and also the sexism accusation, and it may have to do with this sequence of pages that I've just gone through, particularly these pages here with Storm in these risque costumes, that of a prostitute, that of a dominatrix. And you can imagine someone with no knowledge of the character, the X-Men, reading this cold and getting the wrong end of the stick. But even so, and that's a charitable interpretation, my feeling is any intelligent reader of this comic understands what is being explored in terms of characters' fears. And fears are not the heroic side of oneself by definition, and dark desires are not the heroic side of oneself by definition. So whoever the representative was, I think was a dimwit. In any case, let's get back into the story. Oh yeah, by the way, last thing to say is, so who did the $500,000 go to? Because that's what was estimated was raised in terms of monies for charity. Which charity did receive the $500,000? Well, it was the American Friends Service Committee. So that is the charity that received the money for famine relief in Africa. So Storm, having achieved victory over the entity and by extension herself and her dark fears and desires, keels over and she thinks to herself, the thing knew me, my dreams, my weaknesses. No wonder the others are so shaken. This entity strikes to the very core of our beings, but we must fight, resist. So there's lightning outside. And remember, this was something that Claremont was seeding at the time. Even though Storm is powerless, there is an implication that her power is still available in her subconscious, and it becomes active in the external environment, such as this storm here, whenever she's deeply perturbed or exercised. So she orders the X-Men up. X-Men, on your feet, my friends. We're not done yet. This battle is far from over. But they're in despair, especially Kitty Pryde, Nightcrawler, and Colossus. Storm says to them, listen to me, this thing, this entity, seizes on our innermost selves. It plays good against bad, light against dark, hope against fear. It twists both, truth and lie, says and does anything. Why, asks Magneto? To hurt us, says Storm. Rogue here, you can see in the corner, is looking at her compatriots, her fellow X-Men. She's thinking to herself, they all look awful. She's the only one that hasn't been tested by the entity yet. By the way, with the Jam issue, we're on to a new creative team here. So this page and the next is written by Mike Barron, scripted by Mike Barron, and illustrated by Steve Rude, with inks by Carl Potts. So that's the same team again here on this page. So Storm, finish off what Rogue is thinking. She's thinking, why haven't I been hit? What's this entity got in store for me? So we'll have to wait and see what that is. Storm there, she's resolute. She says to the team, we're under attack, and as always, we face a choice whether or not to fight. We've never failed our charge. We've never before failed our charge. Are we now to begin? X-Men, look at yourselves. Think of what we've faced and endured in our lives. Is this so much worse? So Nightcrawler says, yeah, it is. Most of our powers are physical, of no use against a psychic foe. Even Rachel, our new Phoenix, could not withstand its onslaught. You say resist, I ask how? So Storm admits she doesn't know yet. Wolverine's determined. The critter tears out your heart but leaves you alive. That's his mistake. I'm itching to pay the favour back. And Nightcrawler there says, in that case, mein Freund, if you're bound and determined, I'd best come along to keep you out of trouble. So shall we all go. We shall all go. But where, guys? Asks Rogue. The entity and I were in rapport, Ororo. Says Rachel, I think I know where to find him. And I like the hourglass here with the sand pouring out, implying that time is running out. So, new couple of pages now. Scripted by Denny O'Neil and penciled by Brett Blevins and inked by Al Williamson. So the Blackbird is aloft. The X-Men are pensive. Tension hangs almost palpably in the air. Finally, someone mutters, it won't be easy facing that thing again. So, asks Wolverine, but we will face it because we must. And there's Rogue. She's sitting at the back of the plane, and she's thinking to herself, I've never even faced it once, not yet. I wonder what it has in store for me. Can it be worse than what it did to the others? I'm afraid it can, and that scares me half to death. Really like the way that Brett Blevins has kind of tilted the angle here for the view of the various X-Men in the Blackbird, and how they're deep in their thoughts. Kitty looks pretty worried there as well. Magneto looks determined. Yeah, it's good stuff. And there they are. So again, by Denny O'Neil, Brett Blevins, and Al Williamson, they've arrived in Africa. So you can see the complete change of color scheme as well, conveying the heat and dryness of famine-stricken Ethiopia. Then, so they land, and they're there taking in the scene, the devastating scene. Such misery. They're so weak, so helpless. So we see them there. They're so sad. Says Kitty, this is terrible, says Colossus. And Wolverine, as ever, the pragmatist, the hard-nosed pragmatist, says, what did you expect? A picnic? And it looks like Rogue is asking, is this the Entity's fault? Wolverine, did he cause this? We've got to stop him, X-Men, before it's too late. Which is the greater need, Rogue? Battling a villain, or, asks Storm, but what can we do? We are so few, says Colossus, and they are so many. So you can see that here. There's a lot of people in need of relief. So next up, we've got 3 pages scripted by George R. Martin, pencils by Herb Trimpe, and inks by Sal Buscema. So a Lockheed Hercules transporter arrives with food, and the crowd is there seeing it land. You can see the different expressions on the faces. They won't stay back from the plane. They're in danger of being cut to bits by the engine's propellers, which haven't stopped spinning yet. The pilot there is saying there's no time, they're too close to shut down the propellers. So it looks like there's going to be a disaster there. And so Nightcrawler heroically teleports in and teleports out the people closest to the propellers, and then Rachel uses her telekinesis to create a barrier between the people and the propellers, and she thinks to herself, my telekinetic shield will protect these people till it's safe. It's no great strain. They're hardly putting any pressure on me at all because they're so weak. I can feel them dying right in front of me. So then the X-Men get involved in taking out the food aid from the transport plane. And Colossus there is kind of in despair. Our task appears so hopeless, Wolverine. And what of the Entity? Should we not be hunting him? Wolverine says, glory can wait, bub. This is more important. So then we get images of the people being helped with distribution of food. A baby there receiving milk. Kitty Pryde trying to entertain the children. And we get in the narrative caption, here there are no humans, no mutants, merely the living and the dead, those with hope and those far beyond it. The people haven't the energy to waste in fear and hatred. The children can't even smile as Kitty tries her best to cheer them up. They're too busy fighting to stay alive. So let's continue. The next couple of pages are scripted by Bruce Jones, penciled and inked by Gray Morrow. So even the phenomenal endurance of the X-Men is finite. Days later, exhausted by both physical strain and mental despair, the group sprawls disconsolately by a crackling campfire and appraises their bleak efforts. So Kitty there says, I can take the pain of battle. I can even accept the humility of defeat. It's this helplessness I can't bear. Look at us, world's greatest superheroes, saviors of the universe, big deal. And Colossus says, a lesson in humility perhaps, Kitty. We are not, after all, God, whatever God may be, and unlike God, we need this fire for warmth, for succor. Yet when we felled the tree for wood, we removed essential ground cover that allowed the wind to sweep away the topsoil, and that left a sandy, moistureless surface, too poor in nutrients to grow crops. We create havoc in the act of attempting to contain it. So he sighs, I do not know. I'm as drained of answers as this soil is of life. So, kind of looking at one of the factors of famine there, deforestation in sub-Saharan Africa, as a reason why crops couldn't grow. And that's something that Claremont explores again in Life, Death, Part 2, Uncanny X-Men 198. You can check out my review on that. So here we have Rogue helping this, or trying to feed this boy who's dying from starvation, and then he reaches out to touch her, and then he dies with the effort. And she's crying over his corpse. Dear Lord, how can you allow this agony? How can you? But no, it isn't God who's causing this. No more, do you hear? I've had enough, she says. I've heard the last mother wail in agony, seen the last withered infant sink senselessly into oblivion. The other X-Men are so close to giving up. I see it in their eyes, hear it behind every word they speak. They've forgotten why we came, but not Rogue. Maybe I can't do any real good in this camp, but I can make the world a little better, Mr. Entity, by taking care of you. So what she does is, while the X-Men are sleeping, she touches them, kisses them, touches them. See, she's kissing Nightcrawler there. and takes their powers, all with the exception of Storm, who has no mutant abilities in this time. And there she is with all the combined mutant powers of the X-Men, and Storm wakes up and sees her, and Rogue says to her, I'm doing what must be done, but it's nothing to what I'm going to do. So off she goes, and Storm runs after her. Goddess, forgive me, I cannot believe even she can defeat the entity alone. So Rogue arrives at this buried temple, a temple beneath the sand, and she gets there by combining Ray's and Magneto's memories of their tussles with the entity. I got a pretty fair notion of where he's hiding out, and she thinks to herself, and Buster, knowing what you did to my friends, what you're doing to these innocent people just makes me that much madder. So with a combo of his magnetism and of her telekinesis, I'm coming in to make you pay your tab in full. So who's responsible for these pages here? The script is by Steve Englehart, and the pencils by Paul Gulacy, inked by Bob Layton, these 2 pages. So in she comes into the temple, and the kind of the ornamentation looks Egyptian, and she's attacked by these vampire bats, but of course they're not going to do any damage to her. And then the entity in physical form breaks out from a wall there, or from a little kind of tunnel, and attacks her. And her plan is to absorb the entity, but it's too much. So it's all gone wrong for Rogue, despite having the combined powers of all the X-Men. So let's continue. So the next couple of pages are scripted by Jim Shooter, penciled by Alan Weiss, and inks by Joe Rubenstein. So there is Storm. She's arrived in the temple as well, and she sees that Rogue has absorbed the entity's essence, but it overwhelmed her. Now Storm, at this point, having faced her fears and dark desires, feels herself to be oddly calm. It is as though this creature, this temple, were familiar to me, as if they had always been gnawing at the edge of my consciousness, like a dimly remembered childhood dream. And then the entity senses her. Of course, it acquired Rachel's psi power along with Rogue's body. So it teleports in front of Storm. Storm wants Rogue back. The entity is following her, using all of the X-Men's various powers. And the entity here realizes something special about Storm. Even though she doesn't have her mutant powers anymore, you are one of them, aren't you? Asked the entity. Different from those who struggled against me in ancient days, mutated, but much like them. I remember your kind strove to better me, to destroy me, and lost. They built this temple to appease me and failed. How sweet was their frustration and despair. You've learned from their mistakes, though. Calm, unshakable, unafraid. You won't feed me while you live, will you? So, who's he speaking of? My African ancestors, thinks Storm. Can it be that I've genetic memories of her ancestors? And this was a back story that Claremont was seeding and developing for Storm, that she was descended from a line of East African princess sorceresses who were dedicated to lifting up the human race and defeating any kind of threats against the development and happiness of the human race. And that they had a distinctive appearance where their hair was white and they had blue eyes. So that was something he was developing, and that gets hinted at again in Uncanny X-Men 198, which I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. So Storm here is doing well against the entity, and they're up on the surface again, and she says, pretty much like, this isn't too bad. You thank me for cruel death. Old things die, she responds. Better here in the open with the sky beckoning and the wind's caress than down in your pits. So they're on the surface, and the next few pages, the next 3 pages in fact, are scripted by Mike Grell, penciled by Jackson Geese, and inked by Steve Lealoha. So what we have here, it's interesting, like the layouts are simple 6-panel grids. So the entity rushes at Storm, but Nightcrawler's woken up and he teleports her away. And then Colossus is up and he grabs the entity. And so one by one, as the X-Men wake from sleep and come to Storm's aid, the entity loses their powers. So you can see that here, Wolverine's arrival, Kitty Pryde arriving too, Magneto now arriving, and Rachel. So the entity is protesting all the time that he's going to grow strong on the weakness of others while suffering exists. I am. Let's continue with the story here. But I fear it will be temporarily at best, says Nightcrawler as he teleports and kicks the entity in the stomach. But of course, the entity is in Rogue's body. So Rachel uses her telekinesis, or rather a bolt of telepathic energy that strikes the center of Rogue's psyche and splits the entity from her being. So Rogue is freed, levitated down to Earth gently by Magneto. The X-Men are reunited here. It's a meaningless victory, says Rogue, or yells Rogue. Don't you see the entity still lives? Nothing's changed. And Storm puts it together. Perhaps my ancestors came from this place. The human race, it is said, was born here. So this is East Africa. Perhaps the entity is the ultimate primal mutant who evolved alongside humanity, but on a plane of existence more psychic than physical. Consider it like a maggot, a scavenger, living off human suffering. The more intense our misery, the better its meal. And Rachel says, I felt it, Ororo. The entity has existed for as long as the human species, and it will continue to, because of humanity's very nature, the darkness that seems to be in all our souls. So, readers might be wondering, okay, well, if this entity was kind of based in a hidden temple in East Africa, why did it show up at the X-Mansion at the beginning of this issue? Is that going to be like a plot thread left unanswered? No, this is very carefully plotted story. So there's more relief planes arriving. The X-Men are still helping out, distributing the aid. And Nightcrawler asks the question that readers would have. What roused it to suddenly attack now? Why this particular time? Instead of an earlier century, another millennium, Nightcrawler says, Storm, ask yourself, what is different this generation than any previous one? And Wolverine says, mutants. So I suspect, Wolverine, she says, the rise of Homo sapiens superior may have excited the entity. He feeds on psychic misery. To pursue a rather nasty analogy, we could represent a new flavor. And Wolverine says in his characteristic dry way, that's supposed to leave us flattered. Storm continues, we may also have seemed a threat, Logan. After ages, someone, Rachel and Magneto, managed to detect him. Perhaps the attack was to test if we have the ability to harm or destroy him. And Rogue says, and I'm not so sure we didn't flunk it, Storm. So we're into a new creative team now for the last 4 pages starting here. And the scripter of the final 4 pages is Archie Goodwin, the penciler Howard Chaykin, and the inker Walter Simonson. So Chaykin and Simonson, former studio partners in the 1970s when they were both starting their careers. So old studio partners here collaborating on these charity pages. So let's continue. I really like Chaykin's art here. I think it's really good work from him. Featuring some of his tropes like these kind of inset panels where you get an upshot 3/4 profile of a character or a downshot here. This is typical Chaykin layout. The last few pages wrapping it up, what is going to be kind of the moral lesson, the piece of wisdom we take away from the entity, his attack on the X-Men, the X-Men's partial but not complete of defeat of the entity. Because Nightcrawler is saying, we've served no purpose here, Ororo, with the suffering that already surrounds us. Must the world also live forever in the shadow of that monster? Everywhere we turn of late, my faith suffers another blow. My soul is squeezed drier. I don't need something else to helplessly endure. I need a victory. The Storm says, we all do, Kurt, but this time it is beyond mutant powers and danger room strategies. So, there's a realism here in this story. This isn't a Silver Age story in which the heroes win at the end and the problem is fully solved. As Kitty here says, cripes, to really get rid of that monster, we got to eliminate all misery. Not exactly what the world has a great track record at so far. Maybe if you're like Mother Teresa, you could spend your life here saving as many people as possible. Most of us aren't saints. I don't know if there's a way of winning, Fuzzy Elf, she says to Nightcrawler. So maybe I'll just keep unloading these planes and try not to think about it. So here we go, the last couple of pages. It's nighttime, and they're trying to get this boy to eat. Remember the one that died earlier? So this is a kind of a replay of that. And Rogue says, even if you understood our language, Wolverine, you all got to realize sometimes when they're this weak, they kind of give up, can't accept the food. And Wolverine says, yeah, Mother Nature always cuts her losses, Rogue, but just once. And then the boy takes the food. He's taking it. He's eating. So Wolverine smiles there. He's delighted. And he turns to Nightcrawler, who was losing faith. He says, there's something, Elf. This kid had no superpowers, nothing except hope. It's as important as food, because without it, without the will to live it brings, you're finished. So Storm is going to wrap up now, as any of us might have been, Kurt, alone against the entity. That's when hope comes hardest. But X-Men have each other. We draw strength from that knowledge and never give up, no matter how hopeless the struggle. And here we are at the last page. So Storm is giving a big speech to wrap it all up. Perhaps this is the answer, that we are willing to continue the fight always. You counter despair with hope. You strive forever for the best you are capable to be. Therein lies the victory. A tiny one for now, but a beginning. Who knows where it will end? It is not just our battle, but everyone's, fought wherever a human being lives and breathes. A war for the hearts and minds of each combatant. The bodies are merely the field of battle. Here we have discovered the true nature of our foe and learned how to combat him, and we must do it. And Kitty says to Wolverine, I can feel him, Wolverine, watching, eager, hungry. The entity's still here. And Wolverine wraps up, that's right, kitten, but so are we. So the fight goes on against fear and despair, and in the chill darkness of the African desert they wait for morning, for the next flight of relief planes, for the arrival of others as qualified for this struggle as the X-Men are, for those they must face back home. Together, human and mutant wait and hope. So I think this is a really well constructed story, especially given the fact that there's such a wide range of different creators on it. It has got coherence. It has got a thematic arc and point to it. And the characters are all themselves in this comic as well. They're not warped out of their normal characters to suit the plot. And it's a serious reflection and engagement with a serious horror, that of war-caused famine in East Africa in the mid-1980s. Not that there was anything too much about war in this comic. There you've got Chaykin and Simonson's signatures down there in the corner. And here on the very last page, the inside back cover, Jim Shooter talks a little bit about the origin of the project. And you can read that there if you get it in high definition. If you watch in high definition. And yeah, so there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on this unique comic, Heroes for Hope, starring the X-Men. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comment section. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.